Welcome to Richard and Greg, a channel dedicated to discussion, debate, and argument on a whole array of topics. This past week has seen stock markets around the world tumble, with the Dow Jones falling over 3,500 points. The coronavirus has spread to over 60 countries, and we now have in excess of 80,000 infections and nearly 3,000 deaths. We shall get an update from Greg and why he thinks that President Trump is downplaying the crisis. There is now no doubt a pandemic is occurring, and we strongly recommend that listeners help protect themselves from the virus by adopting a number of cautionary measures, not least by the use of some of the products or similar that we have listed in the description box below. A few dollars could save your life, or even prevent you from spreading the virus to others, should you have the misfortune of contracting it in the first place. We hope you find the following discussion useful. Well, it's the 29th of February 2020, Saturday evening at 8:40 p.m. GMT, and we are talking to Greg about coronavirus and hopefully a complete update. We hope he's been studying the figures. Greg, are you online?
I'm online and studied, no less.
Excellent. Okay, Greg, I'm going to hand over the court to you. I've noticed some headlines, more cases in England, more cases in America, more cases in Italy. Fire away. Tell us what's happening.
And more cases in numerous countries around the world. But let's start out with the block figure. We are now up to 86,021 people who have got coronavirus. Deaths to date, they're standing at 2,942. I did say just over a week ago that we would top 3,000 by the end of this weekend. And it looks like I was pretty much accurate. You are finding a fall in serious cases at the moment, but I'm not convinced that will last. I think we'll find that we will have a greater escalation in the numbers than we have seen for a long time, because at the moment, for basically the first time seemed to be yesterday, but today, yet again, there are slightly less cases per DM increase in China, with 433 new cases and 2,835 of the deaths to date, and 79,257 of the 86 odd thousand worldwide. But South Korea has far outstripped China in new cases, with 813 new cases in the last few hours. I think this is 24 hours, but the same period only 433 in China. So we're now up to 3,150 cases in South Korea, and this is growing fast. Italy is also growing at some speed, with 239 new cases during the period concerned and 1,128 total currently in Italy. That has given rise so far, bearing in mind that Italy only started getting numbers of cases in the last few days. The death rate in Italy is now up to 29. Which is really quite a high percentage of the 1,128 who have caught it.
Greg, if I can stop you for a second, you say that, but actually both the overall figures and deaths versus infections and Italy's, they are all meandering around this 3% figure, Greg.
I am merely going on the fact that South Korea has 3,150 cases and 17 deaths. Mm-hmm. Italy has 1,000, a third, and 128 cases, but it has 29 deaths.
Okay.
I think you'll find there's quite a disparity in percentage there.
Between those two, but if you look at overall deaths for the whole world... I would agree with you.
This means, of course, that it's 20 to 30 times as fatal as the annual flu, which is normally around 0.01%.
Greg, can I just add, the national picture is a death rate currently versus the infections of 3.4%, okay? And the Italian picture is 2.6%. So nationally, that's 2,942 deaths for 86,000 infections. That's 3.4%. Now, obviously, they've had longer for the deaths to occur. And as you rightly say, Italy's figures have gone to this sort of reach within days rather than within weeks on the national scale. So I fully accept that. But it does certainly look like, if I recall from previous discussions, the death rate was close to 3%, but it seems worldwide it's now 3.4. So the death rate seems to be rising, I think.
I wouldn't disagree with you, because I think that you'll find it's rising because certain countries seem to be reporting it more accurately. I do seriously question the reporting of this disease on a global scale. The reason being that I just don't believe that the sub-Saharan figure amounts to one person in Nigeria when there is such a close contact between China and sub-Saharan Africa, where China owns outright certain of the countries and has mining interests in several of the countries, and also tremendous contact with clandestine operations that would be disinclined to be quoting figures to anybody, namely poaching, since the bulk of the slaughtered rhinos are slaughtered for the Chinese to buy horn, which amounts to basically keratin, compressed hair that they seem to think is some kind of aphrodisiac, the slaughter of elephants for ivory, and the slaughter of pangolin for their scales, which are also seen as an aphrodisiac. They seem to have a very high requirement for aphrodisiacs in China. I'm not sure what seems to be their problem.
Talking of aphrodisiacs, Greg, if we now sort of pivot to America, they have had their first death today of the coronavirus. So
Indeed,
what are the figures there?
The American figures, there's 68 total cases. They've had 5 new ones during the period, and they have had their first death. I have no details of that death specifically, just as Britain has supposedly had its first citizen die out of the 23 who have been recorded, but please don't let this mislead you, because that citizen died as a result of being a passenger on the Diamond Princess, where there are 705 cases, and it's off of Okinawa in Japan. And although he was a British passport holder, he was in fact not resident in these United Kingdoms. I must admit, I don't know where he was resident.
Okay. Well, President Trump has said the person who died in America was a medically high-risk woman in her late 50s. Now, that's all that's been announced there.
Most women are high risk with Trump, aren't they?
Okay. But the dilemma in America, of course, and the controversy being raised is that Trump has put Pence in charge now, really, of both the data gathering and the media releases, suggesting, and this is what the opposition are claiming, I'm not saying this, that they are likely to talk down the figures. Now, when Trump gave his speech, was it yesterday, he said there were only, I think, 5 or 15, I cannot remember, cases. And then the media came out and said, no, there's treble that figure. And now you're telling me there's 68. So what's happening there, do you think? And is this dangerous if they deliberately underreport as they're being accused of doing?
I think there are several points here. One, it is rumored that very few of the states have the ability to test or are actually testing at this stage. I understand, for instance, that Texas has somewhere in the region of 3,000 flu patients at the moment. I question whether they've all been tested to see if they have COVID-19, which manifests as a form of flu, or whether it is just being passed off as flu, the annual flu. I think there is grave doubt there, especially since it is a particularly Republican area of the United States. And we have to face the fact that Donald Trump has based almost the totality of his campaign for re-election, not just on his cult of his own personality, but also the fact that the stock exchange in America and bonds and the like are doing miraculously well. And we do know that COVID-19 is costing the financial markets around the world billions at the moment. Britain the other day, in one day alone, took a hit of 117 billion on its exchange in one day alone as a result of this virus. And I believe that the figures for the week have been even more dramatically down.
Well, interestingly, Greg, the Dow Jones this past week has fallen just over 3,500 points. And I did hear someone on Bloomberg, I think it was Bloomberg, no, actually Yahoo Finance, actually say that his prediction is that this virus, and this is providing it doesn't get excessively worse, but on current scale, could end up costing the world economy $800 billion.
I think that's conservative. I've seen the figures from various organizations in the financial markets. They're all showing a downturn. Even companies that very rarely show a downturn are getting a lot of stick from their clients because long-term investments have fallen. I know of one instance talking to a senior partner in one of the big investment companies who stated that they have clients who cannot understand why they are being charged any kind of fee at all for their funds to be falling, and couldn't really understand why they had the fact that the funds were falling and they were still being charged for it, even when it was pointed out to them that their fund had fallen 2.1%, whereas the spread across the investments of all the exchanges worldwide was over 10% for the same period. The figures are very varied, but I would say that 800 billion is probably going to look quite cheap at the end of this because we have no end in sight.
800 billion is 1% of global GDP. Global GDP is approximately $84 trillion. So 800 billion is 1% of global GDP. That is a hefty amount.
It's a hefty amount, but 1% isn't all that hefty when you see the percentage terms of how much individual markets have fallen around the world. And I fully appreciate that you need an awful lot of fingers and toes to keep up with the number of noughts involved. It doesn't mean a lot to me once you start talking billions and trillions. And I'm perfectly happy to admit that it doesn't mean a lot. I think an awful lot of people struggle with understanding billions and trillions, just as I do.
Yes. Now, it's just come out. Let's just have a look. It's just been announced that Vice President Pence has announced additional travel restrictions on Iran because of coronavirus. Any off-the-cuff remark to that?
How convenient for Trump's regime to be exercising problems with Iran. I wonder how long it will be before they exercise the same problems with Italy, which has twice as many people with it, or with South Korea, who have, good heavens, 6 times as many as Iran. So I think that's politicking. Though I do concede, would seem to me that Iran is struggling to maintain the lives of a higher percentage of its declared cases than either South Korea or Italy. So it would indicate their medical facilities are not as good. And it is also rather tragically believed that the prison in which a British woman is held completely dishonestly on the part of Iran as a political pawn in a seriously distasteful game that Iran is playing based on lies, that there is coronavirus in that prison and they have refused to test her and she is unwell. I wish her, her husband and her daughter the very best of luck.
Any last thoughts, Greg?
Yeah, I don't want to get it.
And on that note, Greg, I'm going to treat you to a goodbye.
And goodbye indeed. And you're going to ignore me completely and
Indeed.
give me no treatment.
Bye
night,
for now.
Richard.
Good night. We hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if so, kindly subscribe to our channel and press the bell sign so that you are notified of our videos as and when they are published. And also in the description box below, we place links to certain books, articles, and programs which you may find of benefit, and for which we will receive a small commission should you purchase through our link. And this will help support our channel and to enable us to develop it further.